In here in the hangar with the old fuselage. Didn't get much done for a couple of days. Got the flu and spent most of the time running back and forth to the outhouse. But yesterday I was able to get a little bit of work done between bouts, and I got the wings suspended. Now I'd put up strings back there, lines with loops and eyes on them, back there on that spar, or that truss, middle truss. I did that before I brought the airplane home last year. And then I took some just some tie-down straps, ratcheting straps, and put in those eyes, and then tied them up there to the rafters. Well, it don't take much just to suspend these wings. So I've got some scrap pieces of plywood. They're wide enough to span between a couple of ribs and the full width of the wing, or length of the wing, or whatever direction that is, going from leading edge back to trailing edge. And got some old carpeting on it to keep them from getting banged up too bad. Okay, I've got this right wing root all disconnected. The fuel lines and antennas and wires that were on here, everything all disconnected. So this wing is ready to come loose from the fuselage. I just take out the two bolts up here in the wing spar, and then the bolts down there in the struts, and that wing can come loose. The left wing has a lot more crap attached to it, and I've got some of it detached. They've put these nylon hoses on for the pedostatic system, and I got those to slip off okay. I wound up, I believe this one, I wound up cutting the fuel hose on this side, on the forward fuel hose. This 180 horse conversion has two fuel lines coming out of it. You've got a forward line coming out that comes out and goes down this window post and into the fuel selector valve, and then you've got the normal rear one that comes out and goes down that rear window post and forward into the fuel selector valve. And it's the same here on the right wing. We've got a fuel line here in the forward, and then you've got the one back there in the back. Now the other thing that you have on here, of course, you've got fuel lines coming out of the tank that go over into the fuel gauge. You've got one on the top and one on the bottom. And another thing that these 180 horse conversions have is this crossover tube. So there's a smaller vent tube, or crossover tube, that connects into the fuel gauges, goes back across that one spar carry-through member there, and then to the other side and hooks into that one. So that makes it a little more complicated, but I got this side off okay. Now the other side has one more thing, and it has the belly tank, and it has a fuel line that comes up next to the regular one that goes down the window post. It comes up next to it and goes into a fuel line that goes into the left fuel tank, right there. That's the first line is the one that goes to the fuel gauge, and the aluminum one coming out of the wing root is the one that goes, there it is, that goes to the fuel tank, or comes from the fuel tank, I should say, the belly tank. And of course, the yo-yos that put that on last time put the screw clamps with the tighteners, the screw ends of them that you loosen it with, facing up where you can't reach it from the bottom, and you got to climb up on top of the wing to get to it to loosen it up. Oh, and we've got all these other wires and stuff to disconnect on this side. So I've got it about half disconnected now, but I'm going to have to take that fuel tank cover off to disconnect the antenna cables. I have the one antenna cable there for the GPS, and the other one back behind for the comm. There's still a lot of stuff that needs to be disconnected from the engine and to take it loose from the fuselage. We got the tail of the airplane stripped down, I needed to get it stripped down to check on these fittings on the elevators, and I can see now, like that one there, I might as well go ahead and order a new one. I have to look and see if I didn't already, but that one there is pretty bad shape. This other one up here is not so bad. It was pretty greasy. We'll see what it looks like when we clean it up. Jack screw's in okay shape, but all the pulleys are all froze up solid. Been that way for a while. And the tail, well, the tail post itself is not too bad. Everything else is pretty crappy, especially farther forward from the tail. The vertical fin is not in too bad a shape. Little surface rust on it. That little fairing that goes between the vertical fin and that vertical rib there, that ventral rib, that is pretty rusty on the lower portion of it. Oh, I'm glad I got a new one of those. But anyway, we got the tubes came right out of the control there on the elevator, on the well, both of them did. This rear one, they used to have a heck of a time getting it out, and had to cut it and make a puller for it and everything else. And then a few years ago, I drilled a hole in there and made that grease cert, put it on there, and we grease that pretty regularly now, and that made all the difference in the world on keeping that thing slippery, keeping it moving. Came apart pretty tough. Some of it did. The lower rudder pin, it didn't want to come out of there very bad, and it was the metal, the steel was gone in places, and the bushings were pretty wore. Upper one wasn't bad. The right elevator, it didn't want to come apart. The pins, in fact, one of the pins drove the bushing right out of the horizontal stabilizer, getting it out. The left side wasn't near as bad. For some reason, none of the left side all came apart pretty easy, and the stuff on the right side came apart pretty hard. Now, I don't know whether that's because the exhaust comes out the right side, or maybe the prop spray gets wrapped around the right side more, or whether it's because we're in the northern hemisphere, or what the deal is, but the right side seemed to come apart harder than the left side. I'd talked to the mechanics and stuff a few years ago and mentioned that we probably should pull that tail apart every year, replace the pins or the bushings, or pins anyway, and clean everything up and grease them, and that never did get done. But after taking that apart, I feel pretty justified in that. On a float plane, those things should be taken apart every year and checked and greased, and not just squirt oil and stuff in them, in the pins, and feel them if they turn. Here's the tail feathers here all stacked up. The rudder doesn't seem to be too bad a shape. That left elevator, it's crusty. You can see the rust on the trailing edge of it, and the other one, there's rust coming out of the front of it a little bit. And then the right horizontal stabilizer, it's pretty soft. We've had it apart a couple of times to repair it and clean it up, and it's shaky inside. You can hear the rust rattling inside the fabric. The left one is not too bad. There's no rust showing on it through the fabric. It was rebuilt. Well, both the left one and the right one were rebuilt at the same time about 8 years ago. The right one has been taken apart once since then and repaired. Not totally recovered, just repaired on the end of it. And the elevators were done at the same time about 8 years ago. The rudder was replaced then. I got everything off from the engine, everything from the firewall off. Took the engine off, and I took the engine off at the firewall mounts. I'm going to leave the engine mount on the engine so I can mount it on an engine stand. Well, we've got the chain fall there. When I built the hangar, I put in a triple 2x8 up there for a beam, and then put cables around it every 1.5 feet or so, and use that for a hoist. It's I wouldn't hoist a cat from it, but it's okay for this engine and for the airplane, a few other small things. Well, the engine sat there on the engine stand all night, all day. Didn't move any. I wiggled it around a little bit, and the only thing that's wiggling on it is the stand itself from the where the engine mounts onto it to the stand. And I'm going to disconnect it from the chain fall there and move it out of there and get it out from front of the airplane so we can start taking some more of the stuff off of that firewall there. Get the boot cowl off. It took a little bit of doing. Got to have help doing that. My arms aren't 8 feet long and jointed in 4 places, so I can't reach around on the inside and hold the back side of the screws and nuts while I reach around on the front side and unscrew them. But anyway, we got it off. It gives me access now to the back of the instrument panel and all the radios. It'll make it a little easier to get that wiring harness all undone and everything. Get a better look at that stuff and get it out and get it all labeled and ready to transfer to the other airframe. There's the boot cowl over here. You can kind of see the modification they made on it for the square instrument panel and the bigger instrument panel. They just kind of cut out some of the boot cowl there where the windshield was and patched in a piece. This hole over here vent is for the backseat heat. And this piece here is for the defrost, windshield defrost. And windshield defrost and the wing vortex generators are probably 2 of the things I recommend the most for putting on a Cub. And windshield defrost is pretty nice. Just taxiing on the water generates enough heat that it helps defrost the windshield. It won't defrost the side windows until you get in the air, but it does do the windshield, so that's pretty nice. It may not look like it, but I've got this wiring out of the front of the airplane taken out, and all the plumbing and stuff. There's controls there and tubing for the pitot static system and wires for the radios and all kinds of good stuff there. I got that pretty well organized. I got it out, and see, it's all the pieces are kind of spread out, separated, and then thrown on the floor. But they're all labeled, separated, so I can go through them all and check them all out. Looks like most of the wiring I can go ahead and reuse. That's not going to be a problem. A couple of the controls there I might want to check on replacing, mainly the cabin heat control. But a lot of the stuff is in pretty good shape. So anyway, that is pretty well stripped down. I've got one cable yet there. It's the starter. Well, actually, it's the master switch for the master solenoid, and I've got the starter solenoid marked there, and it's hanging there someplace. But anyway, those wires for coming from the battery and the solenoids, they've still got to come out of there, but everything else is stripped down, and now I can take that instrument panel loose from there and use it for a pattern on the new one.